Thanks, Jake. Going to go ahead and call this Tuesday, September 5th, 2023 meeting of the Whitefish City Council to order. Thanks everyone for attending in person. We're also meeting remotely via Microsoft Teams link, so welcome to those joining us from afar. With that said, we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll just have Dick Zollner lead us tonight. Thank you, Dick. Let the record reflect that Councilors Caltabiano and Quinnell are present this evening, and they're joining us remotely from both Whitefish, and I believe Giuseppe's in Idaho. Be safe out there, Giuseppe. With that said, we'll move on to our communications from the public. We do have one public hearing advertised for this evening, so if you're here to speak on that public hearing, please wait until I call that item. Otherwise, if you have anything to bring to the attention of the council, now would be your opportunity. Name and address for the record, please. Ed.
Hey guys, Ed Doctor, 845 Wisconsin Avenue. Thanks for everything you do. Just let you know, the fish tank's been going really well, and thanks for all your support. Frank, we'll see you tomorrow, and then Steve's one more week, and the debate will be the 28th at 6 p.m. Just kind of putting that on the record for you guys all. And thanks a lot. And Rebecca, Lord Vader is not a monster. He's just misunderstood, just like me. Thanks, you guys. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Ed. Thanks for hosting the fish tank.
Hey, could you make something a little spicier too? This is a boring agenda. I'm going to catch you online. This one's pretty small. Thanks.
We'll be out by 8, hopefully. Dick.
My name's Dick Zollner. I just want to talk about the growth policy just a little bit. I went to a meeting the other night in this room, and a lot of people, but what I gathered out of there might be a lot of communications by the computer and stuff, and I think what we had last time, where you had neighborhood meetings, I think is the best thing you can do. It's just like tonight when you guys were talking amongst yourself to the public, getting feedback both ways. And so I'm just saying, I hope you guys do that. I know you're kind of under the gun, so just kind of put it together and let the neighborhoods tell you what they like, don't like. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dick. That is included in the program, but thanks for the comments. Further public comment tonight? Any volunteer board reports? How about the council? Michelle, anyone online? Steve, Giuseppe? Not seeing any. You do have the consent agenda with the August 21st, 2023 meeting minutes. I would like to just comment and congratulate Officer Michael Hingis. He was confirmed as a police officer after completing his 1-year probationary period. So congratulations to Michael and welcome aboard. With that said, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second? I'll second. Seconded by Councilor Fury. Further discussion?
I would also like to add my congratulations to Chief Hadley. Welcome aboard. It's so good to see you. Thanks.
All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign. Stephen, Giuseppe, just show of hands. Thank you, and that passes unanimously. Michelle, which brings us on to our one public hearing of the evening, which will be Ordinance 23-18, an ordinance repealing 1-6-2-E-3 of Whitefish City Code, and this was brought forward by the City Council. Angie.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. So 1-6-2-E-3 of the Whitefish City Code provides that no ordinance shall be passed or repealed unless by a vote of the majority of the members elected. And I think a couple months ago, Council asked me to look into repealing the ordinance because we've run into some issues when there's a quorum of council present, which is 4 of you. But ordinances have failed because they have not passed because there's no basic supermajority. And it's created kind of some issues when, 4 of you attend and then it fails because one member, votes against it. And there is a mechanism to bring it back for reconsideration, either at the end of the meeting or at the next meeting, which we have done, but it's kind of a clunky, seems like a clunky process to pass ordinances, to bring them back, 2 weeks later. Anyway, so council asked me to look into it. I wrote a memo to you a couple months ago. I did warn you that there are certain provisions of Montana law that do still require a 2/3 vote of the council members elected. So there will be some circumstances where we have to apply state law rather than this code provision. This code provision is really old. I looked back and I think it was like 1918. I don't know what the history of it is, but it's quite old. So I drafted the proposed ordinance. It basically just repeals 1-6-2-E-3. However, I will caution you that in order to repeal this ordinance, you have to have a supermajority. So with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I just want to say thanks to Angie, but Steve and Giuseppe for joining us so we can get this passed this evening, hopefully. Any questions for Angie on her staff report?
I do.
Frank?
Angie, assume with me, if you will, we have 4 councilors and 1 mayor at a meeting. And we enact this, and an ordinance comes by that we can pass by simple majority. We have a 2-2 tie. The mayor passes or votes on it one way or the other. It then goes with 3 votes confirming it's either passage or not passage. Is that correct?
So if you have a quorum,
Yes?
2 vote in favor,
2 vote against?
2 vote against,
Yes?
yes, I would think it still passes
Okay.
Or fails?
or fails.
I'm good with that. Thank you.
We did advertise for a public hearing on ordinance 23-18. We'll hold that public hearing now. Any public comment this evening? Thank you.
Solves the problem of my fear of public speaking. There's nobody here. Mike Hine, 612 Lupfer Avenue. I could appreciate the savings. I included a letter in the packet about this. It's a little more formal than what I'll add here. I can appreciate the savings of having ordinances show up at more than one meeting, the awkwardness of having anyone who voted for it be able to bring it back the next week. But I do have a small problem, maybe for just discussion and consideration, that it's the one part of the letter that I think is important is that it's exactly the ordinances that have dissent that are the ones that should have 4 votes, that are the ones that should require the council to fully weigh in and not leave it to a possible mayor breaking a tie in a 3-2. It just seems to me to be shortcutting the process. I don't think philosophically making it easier to pass ordinances is a great idea in and of itself. I don't think it's necessarily bad. And then the other thing I mentioned, less significant, but possibly in the future worrisome, is that while I deeply trust this council, this mayor, elections have consequences, they change. Could the system be somewhat gamed by bringing ordinances on days when we know that the attendance is going to be short? It's a possibility. I don't know if that's significant enough to outweigh the practical considerations of the benefits of changing it to a simple majority. So I'm opposed, not enthusiastically, but something to consider. So that's all.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Michelle, anyone online wishing to provide comment?
No, I think just Giuseppe and Steve are on there.
Yep. Giuseppe, did you have a comment after I closed the public hearing, or did you have a question for Mike? And we can't hear you. I think you're muted. You're still muted. He does not. Still can't hear you, Giuseppe. Is your computer microphone off?
have Michelle read it.
Do you want us to wait until you figure it out, Giuseppe, or move on? Yeah, we still can't hear you, Giuseppe. Steve, can you hear Giuseppe? We can't hear Steve either.
Steve, can you try speaking for us? Unmuting your mic? No, we can't hear you. So it's definitely something with the whole setup, not just one or two of you. It's both. It's all of us.
Sorry, guys, we'll take a minute here to try to troubleshoot this. Jake, is it something on your end?
Jake, it's probably this extra computer that Michelle's logged into.
This is a good meeting to have this problem.
Yeah.
How to make a short meeting long.
Right.
Yeah.
Steve, can you keep talking while we troubleshoot this, or just,
Oh, we can keep talking, absolutely.
there you go, Giuseppe, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
Can you hear
So,
me too?
Yeah, we can hear both
I'll
of you,
make-
thanks.
Okay, great.
imagine if this happened while I was landing into LAX in the fog. That would be a little bit thrilling. So I want to just make a point of accuracy. I couldn't see the speaker who provided that comment, but he said that as the ordinance is written to, actually our rules say that in second reading, whoever voted in the affirmative, in the affirmative can call out for further consideration. I want to make the statement that it's not that case. The case is whoever voted with the prevalent side. So if the ordinance failed, because 4 people voted against it, only one of the 4 people who voted against it can call to reconsider the ordinance. It's not the affirmative, it's the prevalent. Just making this clarification for the public.
I think Mike understands that now. Giuseppe, thanks. He just gave you
Okay.
he just gave you a thumbs up
All right.
from the audience. Steve, any comments? Michelle, anyone online wishing to provide comments? I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and turn it back to the council for a motion. Rebecca. It's 23-18, ordinance 23-18.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 23-18, repealing Whitefish City Code 162E3.
Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
Further discussion?
I just wanted to thank the one person in the audience for the intelligent comment, because that is actually a valid concern. Hopefully, we won't send the city in a wrong direction if some of us aren't here. But we do tremendous amounts of business normally, and so it just is another way to kind of speed things along and not hold up deliberations. But thanks for your input.
And there's also been times where we've had applicants actually pull or voluntarily postpone, knowing that we were not going to have a full quorum, because it kind of sets a higher bar. So I think it can go both ways, Mike. So, Andy, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I really appreciated your letter, Mike, but
Yeah.
the system could be gamed in the opposite direction too. So it's kind of, I mean, we've almost seen that happen where someone knows, it's like, wow, we don't have enough people here, and so if you're opposed to something, by example. So, I mean, that danger lies either direction, I think, because things tend to come through the system and come onto our agenda when they do. And as the mayor said, we do see people will pull something if they're concerned, you know, about the number of people that are there on any given night. So, but yeah, I looked at this and I've looked at it hard, and I don't think it's an issue, and I don't think it's like the Senate taking the nuclear option and picking Supreme Court justices. And if I did, I would vote against it in a heartbeat. So,
Andy, Frank.
The other Andy. No, the, Angie, question, is this is under the old rules or our historic rules, if somebody was not at a particular meeting, did not vote, at the next meeting when they were there, and it's on the consent agenda, can they pull it off for further consideration?
Microphone,
Mike.
Angie.
Mike?
Sorry about that.
From everything that I've read, if you weren't there for the consent agenda, you can still vote one way or another, right? Because that's just kind of the purpose of government. But I don't think if you didn't actually vote that you could pull it off. But I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Can I say one more thing?
Yes, please.
Okay. I would also like to thank Mike for his nice letter. I ran into Mike, and I think in the last couple of years, we have seen less civility towards city staff. He was kind, he was nice, we had a great conversation. He bought me a beer, so thanks, Mike.
I guess it seems to me that if we, to avoid the near occasions of sin, if we want to call it that, of somebody trying to game the system, or one side or the other trying to game the system, it seems to me that a fail-safe might be that either a prevailing party or a party that was not there could pull it off for further consideration at the next meeting, if they wanted to do that. I mean, is that not something that would be?
I believe you can do that, even if you didn't vote for it. You can't move to reconsider, but anyone at a given meeting can request something being removed from the consent agenda and
Yes.
treat it as a regular item.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, so you could, so even if you weren't there for the first reading and didn't vote, you could ask that it was pulled off and voted on separately and open for further discussion, so.
But it wouldn't be that point, it would be open for further discussion, would it be open for reconsideration at that point?
Well, it's not reconsideration, it's still an active item because it hasn't been passed because you haven't voted on the second reading.
Okay.
Yeah, so you'd pull it off the
That's been the case forever. In other words, that, we've always.
Yeah, that's basic Robert's Rules of Orders, yeah.
Okay,
So,
thanks, and I think that solves really the problem.
Yeah, it's on the table just in the consent agenda, and you can just ask to have it considered separately.
Yeah,
So
that
that's
works great.
just a courtesy thing in Robert's Rules, so.
No, okay, that solves my problem.
Further comments from the council? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that passes unanimously. Thanks, Giuseppe. Thanks, Steve. We'll move on to item 7A of our agenda, which is ordinance 23-19, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Whitefish, Montana, repealing emergency ordinance 23-16 and lifting stage 1 and stage 2 fire restrictions within city limits on a first reading. Chief Hadley.
Thank you, Council. So as you know, we've had an extremely dry summer, and that forced us to go into stage 1, stage 2 fire restrictions early in August. Thankfully, with the change in the weather patterns, we've got more moisture, and the county and the Forest Service has come out of fire restrictions and are no longer have any fire restrictions imposed. So to keep true to what we did going into fire restrictions, following them, to keep everything on the same level, we are suggesting that we do the same thing coming out of fire restrictions and following them out at this time. So it is a recommendation that we repeal emergency ordinance 23-16.
Thanks, Cole. Any questions for Cole on his staff report?
Just a quick one, Cole, is Stoltz opened up again then?
I'm not certain if Stoltz
did.
has opened up
Did they?
access
Okay.
to their property,
All right.
but the Forest Service was the first to make action to pull off of the fire restrictions.
Yeah, I checked their website today and it's open. Yeah.
That's
so-
what they said.
Yep. So, further questions for Cole, comments, or I'll entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve ordinance 23-19, lifting stage 1 and stage 2 fire restrictions within city limits.
Thank you, Ben. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Counselor Sweeney. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, like sign, and that motion also carries unanimously. Michelle, you have Dana's report enclosed with the packet. Any questions for Dana on her staff reports? Dana, anything additional to report on?
I just have one, which is actually within my staff report, or my manager's report. The Montana League of Cities and Towns, last year we participated in this Support Local social media network platform that was being created for communities in Montana to be able to encourage individuals to think locally when it came to really the Montana legislature and that session that we just went through. But in preparation for the next session, they'd like to continue this work to have this campaign of Support Local, where you kind of share what cities are doing, what public employees are doing to really get a good message out there. But they want to expand that to also include a statewide poll regarding individuals' thoughts on property taxes and other local government issues, so that they can actually create a really strong narrative surrounding what property taxes do for individuals. And to do that, there is a cost for the statewide poll. It comes in at $50,000, and the league has asked cities if they're willing to participate. If we want to participate in the Support Local program again, it's $3,400. If we want to also participate in expanding that to include the statewide poll, it would be an additional $5,600, so a total of $9,000. So while we didn't actually budget for that full amount, we do have adequate reserves in the general fund, and typically we see cost savings anyways among departments within our general fund that I think would absorb that cost pretty easily. So I'd just like direction from council if I can tell the league, yes, we're in, or no, we're not this year.
Rebecca, question?
What's the anticipated gain that we get as a city for $9,000?
So one, we can use the marketing tools that they've created on this social media platform. They're also pushing out a lot of information on Facebook and those kind of sites. But the information that we'll get from the statewide poll, I think, is going to be really critical come this next legislative session. Property taxes are going to be attacked. I mean, there is a need to look at our property tax system. So I'm not saying what we have is right, but we need to come forward with the right verbiage, the right narrative of, if we are looking to redoing that model of how we assess property taxes, having the right words to explain it, I think is really critical. You say like, oh, your property tax bill for the city of Whitefish, of your $3,000 tax bill, only 25% is from the city. What do you get for that amount of money? You got parks, you've got police, you've got fire. You call 911, somebody responds. So there's a lot of education, I think, so that people realize, you pay $1,200 for insurance and you might never use it that year. Well, property taxes are similar when it comes to police and fire. You're paying for them to respond. So being able to educate, but how can we relate to individuals in the state of Montana more effectively, I think is important for us.
So it's kind of a pushback. I think some of the legislators, I read an editorial, I think where Senator Hertz was listed, and they were talking about Missoula property taxes and blaming the local governments for the increase in the property tax issue here instead of what happened at the legislative level. So this is more of an educational outreach to let people know what actually happened and who really needs to take responsibility for the property taxes going sky high. And so okay, thank you for that. So we're just, it's being proactive and educating our citizens about how they can get involved to make changes in a timely manner too. All right, thank you.
Yeah, it'll be used primarily for like the campaign of like how, like when we move forward into the next session and even before that, because now is the time to start educating people. What do your property taxes go to? And on that note, I heard individuals like Senator Regier speak that property taxes are going up, but what all these senators and legislators have actually failed to note is that they did not reduce the statewide mills that they're levying for schools of 60 mills, which in Whitefish will go up 60%. The amount of money they're going to collect is 60% higher than they did 2 years ago, where Whitefish is actually providing a decrease in their property taxes. So yes, your tax bill will go up, likely, because I don't know that the county and the city and the local school can offset what money the state is actually going to collect on their mills. So I think some of that's just education, and if you look at your tax bill closely enough, you'll see it, but many won't.
So Dana, one other idea in the article was that the legislature could reconvene and actually go back to how we used to set taxes. There's certain percentages, and do you think it would be worthwhile for us as a city to write to our legislators and ask them to try to reconvene and relook at the property tax bills? Or do you think it's too late for that?
So my understanding is the League of Cities and Towns, as well as, I can't remember which entity, the Montana Infrastructure Coalition that worked a couple years ago to get some bills passed on infrastructure funding. They're also working, and there's another group that's working together to try to come up with and look at our property tax system to give them the proposal. So not letting them say this is what you need, having the cities and the towns work together, say, you know what, here's a better option. And so I think we already have that ongoing. It'll be happening in this interim session.
Thank you.
Further comments? Ben, Andy?
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that in my admittedly limited experience, I found the Montana League of Cities and Towns to be an effective and reasonable voice in the state legislature, which doesn't always, seems like we need more of that these days, not less. And this feels like a fairly modest contribution towards their goals, and it feels appropriate to me to support what they're doing. So.
Thanks, Ben. Andy?
Yeah, I think the continued erosion of local control that we see at the legislature needs to be called out, and no better way to do it than through the league. And the full head-on assault against us as cities is not going to stop. It's only going to get worse, I'm afraid. And we need to let people understand what really happens out there. And the other group that actually, and they've asked for a judge's opinion on the state's 95 mills, is Mako. And Flathead County signed on to that this past week, I believe. Yeah, and so Mako's soliciting a judge's opinion as to whether or not, because we're all hamstrung with what we can do, but the state doesn't seem to be, and they play by different rules than they make us play by. And so even the county, which is a pretty conservative organization, is saying, hey, wait a minute, maybe that's not right. So it's going to be interesting to see what that judge's opinion is when they get a ruling back on that. So
Thanks, Andy.
And just to clarify, I think I know the answer to this question. Sensitive around here is for some. None of this money will be used to further market this city for purposes of visitation during our prime time.
Correct. Support local is support your local government, not support local businesses that we've seen run for tourism.
Yes, that's what I thought. I just want to make perfectly clear so everybody understands.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Frank. Dana, anything else to report on?
Not this evening.
But a quick question, if we don't have the Housing Whitefish Workforce Assistant Fund presentation on the next meeting, what's the back?
We might not have a work session.
Okay.
So I did reach out to Daniel. He's on vacation till tomorrow. So I should know tomorrow if we'll be having a work session. But that was the plan.
We're not going to backfill it if.
I don't think so. I don't know that we have anything pressing to get on there. But we'll know tomorrow after our directors meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
We'll move on to communications. Who would like to start this evening?
Do we want to talk about our work session? And
I think we need to talk about both the food vendor regulations as well as the viaduct improvements and try to get some direction back to Dana on both topics. So yes.
you want me to speak to those?
Please.
Okay.
Yep.
I have two other issues too. Okay. You know, the viaduct, from the pictures, it doesn't look like it's going to look any different, which is unfortunate, but it will function better. And I'm glad they're allowing us to move things and not have new ones. And so I do think the landscaping at the entrance will kind of make it not so industrial looking. So I would be okay with proceeding. I know we've had some offers of assistance in beautifying it further, but I do think we need to keep moving forward on projects. So that's my first one. Do you want me to stop there and we can all talk about?
Let's address one item at a time. So
Okay.
let's start with the viaduct improvements. I had a question, Craig. With these improvements to the lane configuration, post-improvement, if you're coming south over the viaduct, is the left turn lane onto Railway heading south, is that now eliminated?
The southbound left turn lane
Onto rail-
would remain onto Railway.
It would remain?
Yep.
Okay. Heading
Yeah.
east,
The only difference, well, there wouldn't be any difference unless we move forward with the removal of the southbound slip lane. But even with the removal of the southbound slip lane, that left turn onto Railway would remain.
okay, great.
It would just be your right turn westbound onto Railway. You wouldn't have an immediate exit. You're going to slow the traffic down behind you
Exactly.
to make that right turn.
Which will be more of the cantankerous issue that we deal with.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Ben?
Maybe a small number of questions, if that's all right. My first would be for the lighting improvements. So the lighting improvements that are proposed here are only for the west side of the road on the south end of the viaduct?
No, so the lighting improvements would be on both sides of the viaduct, east and west. It just wouldn't improve the lighting on the actual bridge deck itself. Because in order to change the lighting on the bridge deck, we would have to create new anchors or new supports to replace that lighting scheme, so that you'd have new, decorative lighting on both approaches, on both sides.
Okay, so both sides, both approaches, north and south.
Correct.
Okay, that explains why it's as expensive as it is. Is there any options to improve the appearance of the Jersey barriers? Can we paint them? Can we do something to them?
We can paint them. So the position we were in about a month ago was to come to council with a larger project which included new Jersey barriers that would have kind of a decorative precast sort of mountain scene in them. However, they would still be Jersey barriers. They'd still be precast concrete, collision barriers that would be along both sides. And so we determined, based on MDT's recent news, that our best bet is just to take the existing ones and move them out. We can easily paint them. We could probably do some additional decorative artwork on them, so to speak, but what you're going to have is the existing Jersey barriers.
I would caution on painting though in this type of environment with the plowing and stuff. It's gonna, I would think we would see that this would be an annual maintenance issue and would be costly. It would be an ongoing cost that we would have to look at supporting, because a painting that's starting to flake off is not gonna look as pleasing as just a gray barrier, in my opinion. But something to consider, that would probably include an ongoing maintenance cost.
What is the future of the Railway Avenue intersection? Like, I know we're talking about improving the west end of it. What about the rest of the intersection?
The rest of the intersection of Railway and Baker?
Of Railway and Baker, yeah.
So what's shown in the downtown master plan is the elimination of both of those slip lanes. So in addition to the westbound slip lane coming off of the viaduct going west on Railway, there's also the eastbound slip lane as you're traveling eastbound on Railway. And I think that's going to be the one that's going to be a little more controversial. The downtown master plan calls for the elimination of both of those to improve the bicycle and pedestrian crossings of Railway. Right now, on either side of Baker Avenue, you have 100+ feet of crossing to get across both Railway and those slip lanes, and it creates a pretty dangerous situation for pedestrians walking across the street. And so, I mean, that's the main intent of what the project that's shown in the downtown master plan is to improve the pedestrian crossing. The elimination of that that eastbound slip lane is going to be more controversial and going to cost more money, and so we've kind of left it out of this project. The ultimate goal, I think, that Public Works would want to talk to council about is the elimination of both of them, but we realize it's probably not a conversation for this project.
If it's not as a part of this project, when would it happen? Or when would we ever look at that again?
During a future budget cycle.
You
know, I mean, going back to where we were a year ago, you know, the intent was, let's move forward with this project without curtailing any of the future elements of the downtown master plan. Don't do something that would prevent, you know, the railing from being changed, or from the fencing to being changed, or, you know, the lighting to be changed. And so what we're trying to do is work through this in sort of a phased project. What we're doing, or what we're proposing for this $780,000 doesn't curtail us from doing any of the other elements in the downtown master plan, the east side of Railway and Baker being one of those. But that is a more significant project that likely requires more public input that we're not proposing during this phase.
Fair enough. And is a light in the future plans there too? I can't remember.
A traffic signal?
Yeah.
At the intersection of Railway and Baker? No.
Okay.
No, I think if we were to propose a future traffic signal, we would want it at First and Baker, not at Railway.
Right on. And then the last question I had is, Dana, I wonder if you could remind us where the identified funding source is for this project?
So it's from the street fund.
Okay. And we're sufficiently funded?
We have $300,000 budgeted this year. We are spending on that fund just slightly, but it's from the projected end of year fund balance for fiscal year 23 versus 24. We're actually growing that amount. So I'm confident we'll be able to fund this project through the next two budget cycles, so fiscal year 24 and 25.
Thank you.
Further comments on this item? Are we all in agreement to move this forward?
I have a comment, and I see Steve also has been raising his hand. May I speak, Mayor?
Please.
I follow and agree fully with Ben's concerns or questions about looking at the bigger picture and the longer-term plan. For instance, in this picture, are we considering the underpass, which is pedestrian underpass, that we have a few yards north of that critical junction? And what are the results of that work? Do we have a sensor that can tell us if people are using it? Because it could be as simple as not allowing a pedestrian to cross where the sleepways are and cross either on the south side of the corner or in the underpass. And I'm throwing this just to corroborate Ben's question and concerns about making a decision looking at a bigger picture rather than piece by piece, which could constrain us in future decisions.
Thanks, Giuseppe. Steve?
Yeah, I feel a little uncomfortable with the cost here for what we're getting. You know, basically, we're saying it's going to cost us if we take out the $30,000 for updating West Railway, it's costing us $750,000 to put in some trees and move some barriers and add some lights. And I have a lot of heartburn over how much that cost is for what we're getting out of this. And I just wonder if we need to save that money until we can actually do a full upgrade. So kind of on the fence on this one. I understand the need to widen those pedestrian walks across the bridge, but it just seems like we're not really getting much for what we're spending here.
Thanks, Steve. Rebecca?
I mean, aren't the paths 6 feet across now? And so we're going to 10 feet? They're not 6 feet?
Yeah, I
five?
think they're 5.
Yeah, I think that alone will be a significant help on that overpass because it's difficult crossing over and when other people are with bicyclists or multiple people, groups of people, and so it will be much safer that way. And then will the shared paths be new then? Or we have to make them, or we just move the barriers out?
Yeah, so the cost for the shared use path doesn't include any new surfacing. It's just moving the barriers and replacing. There's a section on either side, on all 4 corners of curb that has to be replaced, and then the replacement of those crash attenuators. But the surface itself would remain.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
How does that come in at $380,000?
You know, I
didn't mean to
don't
interrupt
have
there.
the detailed cost estimate in front of me, but there's a fair bit of concrete demolition and replacement that has to happen for the curbing on both sides, and then the traffic control and actually the labor, equipment and labor to move the barriers. So I could get back to you on that, but I don't have that actual detail in front of me right now.
Does the consultant?
I would think that Stephen would probably have it.
Okay.
If I could just break in for another second, I mean, based on what we're getting, I just wonder if there's a way to do some restriping for bikes and maybe a curb cut or two that would, because as a bicyclist, there's plenty of room to ride outside the Jersey barrier across that bridge. I mean, I know we wouldn't want little kids doing it, but for the most part, the bicyclists like me and a lot of other people that ride, there's so much room on the bridge. There's way more room on the bridge than there is anywhere else on Wisconsin. And I'll shut up about the heartburn about the price, but that's what I'm feeling.
Thanks, Steve. Rebecca?
I mean, I understand what Steve is saying, but I also feel like we need to start moving projects forward. And so, if we're not allowed to do any changes because the MDT won't allow us, at least we will be improving the usefulness of that. I do wish it was going to be prettier or more appealing, but really it's only there to convey people from one side to the other of the railroad tracks below. Nobody's hanging out there. Nobody's having block parties. It's just a way to get from one side of town to the other. So I would be okay with moving forward unless you guys are really feeling like we should wait another 2 or 3 years,
It's only going to get more expensive.
And also, we can fund some of it this year, we can fund more, we can keep changing. It's just that this has been a long-term project for us. And I would like to add that when I was chairing the Wisconsin Avenue Corridor Plan, we had an idea of branding that area beyond the viaduct to encourage growth in that area and foot traffic over to that area. And so if we could make the viaduct more appealing and safer to travel over there, we really did want that to be kind of a branded economic driver for that part of downtown to take some of the pressure off of downtown too. So.
Andy?
I share Steve's concern with some heartburn on the cost of it, and I really don't understand why it costs $380,000 to bring a crane up and move those things over a couple of feet. That seems really high to me. That's a little ridiculous. And Steve is 100% correct that the widest place you can ride on that bridge is when you're in the lane on the right, on the inside of the Jersey barrier. The only problem is the bike path doesn't feed you there. The bike path doesn't let you get to that lane. The bike path puts you onto the sidewalk that's there now, and that's where people are at, and that's what people want to try and ride on, and that's what they're going to ride on. And the people that are cyclists in town that ride a lot, they're going to know, and they're going to go over you know, the left side or the right side of the Jersey barriers, but everybody else, and I mean, I watch it enough. I live on the north side, so I drive over the viaduct multiple times or ride my bike over multiple times a day all year long, and there's just too much traffic in a very small area, and it's strollers, and it's people on the one-wheel board, and it's people on motorized skateboards now, and they're on scooters, and it's just dangerous, and that's not gonna go away by striping out on the bridge deck. It's not gonna happen, so. And would I like it to look better? Yeah, I would love it to look better, but we don't have the money to do that, and I mean, I look at this, I see the beautification part of it, but for me, it's pretty much 100% a safety issue, and particularly getting rid of the slip lanes, and I'm sorry, Doug Adams, most people that do have engineering degrees and stuff, their craniums are not too small, and that right one onto the deck going northbound is actually one of the worst, because people fly through that one all the time, because they're trying to beat the traffic, coming off the light, and no one even looks, and there's people on those same skateboards and one wheels and with strollers trying to get across there, and I mean, I'm sorry if Doug has to spend a little bit more time. My heart bleeds for that man, but other than that, if somebody gets hit there, and eventually somebody will, there's gonna be a pedestrian accident or a bike accident, and then we're all gonna feel bad that we didn't do something, so yeah, I'm all for moving forward, and like I said, would I like more? You bet, but for me, it's a big safety issue, and I think we're gonna solve a lot of those problems with at least this project, so.
I'll take that as direction. Can I get a showing of hands of the council who supports moving this forward in its entirety? Giuseppe? And that, I guess Giuseppe opposes moving forward, but the other 5 approve. Further comments?
Thanks to Craig for your patience with this project. I know there's been a lot of ups and downs getting things done. Thank you.
And we'll move on to any comments on the food vendor regs. I believe we did provide direction to bring a draft ordinance back for consideration, so we're set there. Okay, great. Who would like to start tonight with comments? Andy? Okay. Rebecca?
Yep, I have been in communication with Justine, who's our bear management specialist, and there are a lot of bears coming into town, and so she wasn't able to come tonight to reinforce the concept of latching the bear-resistant containers, but already so could someone from the city just review with the public what's going to happen now that we've gone through the second reading of our enforcement part of the bear-resistant containers, and what happens if they overfill, don't latch. She's having to put a lot of electrification things around people's trash cans, and so they're here. I just had one. My dog is actually a livestock guardian dog, and she went nuts the other day, like around noon. A huge black bear walking through. So they're not coming out just at night. They're coming out during the day. They're coming onto people's porches. She showed me videos of a mama and 2 bear cubs walking across someone's porch, and they'll keep coming back if they get food. So I just wanted to give the staff an opportunity to educate the public again about what happens if you don't follow the rules about trying to limit bear activity with garbage. Thank you.
Thanks, Rebecca. Sure.
Do you want me to respond to
I'm
that?
sorry.
That's okay. The ordinance that just passed second reading will be effective in 30 days. That said, we are still going around and letting people know as we hear of unlatched containers, we'll contact them. But effective in 30 days from today, all garbage containers must be securely latched when outside, placed outside. There are some other things that have changed with that ordinance, including when you can set your container out. It can be set out prior to your collection day, the evening prior to accommodate those that can't wake up early to get their container out. But I think the most important part is making sure that your container is latched. If you are filling your garbage can too full, we can get you another can. Yes, there is a charge associated with that. Or, make plans to haul your own garbage to the dump. No longer can you have waste outside of your container.
Thanks, Dana. Ben?
No further comments?
Frank?
Just a couple. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Jake. A couple of things. We too, even in my neighborhood, I'm on the edge of the city, and so many of my neighbors are not in the city, are not required to have bear-proof containers. This is a problem, because we have a bear in our neighborhood as already. So we know this, and we'll just see how it plays out again this year. So I guess that's my advocating that the county consider requiring it of all garbage customers, but that's that. There was a note or a letter that we received this evening from Jan and Miles Gordon out on Lacey Lane. Craig, are you aware of what's going on out there? I mean, are they now required to take all their trash cans up the hill? I mean, what's going on? Why is it different now than it was?
Yeah, I'm not sure on that one. That was the first I'd heard of it. I know that having driven down Lacey Lane a number of times, I do recall the large, 5-yard containers that were there.
Yeah.
Those were eliminated as part of this process. So I don't know. We need to touch base with the Republic on that and try and get to the bottom of it.
That'd be good. I mean, it just seems to me that they shouldn't be required to haul those garbage cans any further than those green containers. If they were going down to pick those up, no reason they can't go down to pick up the bear-proof ones, correct?
Well, the containers are up by East Lakeshore Drive, the old 5-yard containers.
Okay.
And so I think the solution may be just to have a kind of a bay of the 96-gallon bear-proof containers
Right.
in that same location. But again, I'm not entirely familiar with that one. It just came in today, so we'll get to the bottom of it.
Great, that's great, thanks.
Anything further? Nope. Steve?
Thanks, John. Just want to apologize to everyone for not being there. Some of you heard I tested positive for COVID. I dodged the thing for over 3 years and somehow got sick. I heard it's spreading around Flathead High School too, so I don't know what's going on. And other than that, I don't really have anything other than to say that as the temperatures change, it's just good to keep in mind mental health as the days get shorter. It is a time of people thinking about different things. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you, Steve. Giuseppe?
Yes, and I associate myself with Steve's comments about mental health. And Steve, we can go start doing the 21 push-ups every day together. The audio wasn't working previously. I wanted to congratulate Fire Chief Hadley, myself too. Obviously, he did a great job. In the first week on the job, we already reduced the fire risk and passed an ordinance. So is doing very well. Keep doing that, Fire Chief. We forget about fires around town. And for the rest, thank you for your patience with me being remote. Truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Giuseppe. I wanted to thank you and Steve for attending remotely. I know it's very painful to do so. I've done it on many occasions in the past, so thanks for participating tonight. And I wanted to thank Michelle for the wonderful dinner. And I have nothing further. Anything further from staff, Dana? Council?
Actually, I had one thing I forgot.
Yeah.
So I just noticed that Malmquist Construction on their Wisconsin project, after we've already told them a couple of times, is back to multiple signs on their fence. So we probably need to remind them again that they get one 4x8 and that's it. And next time, I think we should fine them because they have been warned and they continually do it, and there's no reason for it, so.
Thanks, Andy. On that note, we are adjourned. I had noticed that today.